Hey everyone, in today's video I want to do a continuation of my check spring video, and this is a check spring. Okay, it goes under your machine and it is the last thing here that your thread passes through before it gets to your looper. And I want to show you a little bit about what this does and how important this is. This is very important, and I think it's an overlooked component in the chain stitch machine. I posted this the other day. Number one side is a non-working check spring. Okay, that's what happens if your check spring isn't working properly. And number two is a properly working check spring. So hopefully I can kind of explain to you how to get this installed. If you're getting a new check spring or you have a new machine, you might want to fine tune this and make sure it's working properly. It's a simple little thing, but there is a coil spring on one end and a loop for your thread to pass through on the other. And then this hook is how you secure this to your machine. It is an important component. So we have the hook that accepts the screw to attach it to your machine. Then we have the coil spring that functions as a spring so that these two can rotate. And then we have the arm, and then we have the loop that the thread goes through. And I understand that this loop on the end here, it's problematic and your thread probably catches on it. So I'm going to go over how to get this installed and get it working properly on your machine. Okay, so I'm going to switch to look at the machine and we'll talk about this spring. Okay, hang on. So this is a brand new check spring from Mauser Mannin. Okay, it's not used. And I want to kind of talk about the spring. This is an important item in your stitching, and it does have an effect. As you can see from this example, number one is a non-working check spring, and number two is a properly working check spring. The difference between one and two, the only difference, the only adjustment, the only change, is that in number one, the check spring was not working properly. Makes a huge difference. This little bitty part can have this much of an effect on your stitching. There's of course other variables where number one could have been loose tension, and tension is right here. This is your tension device that by screwing this part left or right increases or decreases the tension on these discs in which your thread passes through. That is one possibility for how these stitches changed. But in this case, what I'm trying to show you here is the value of a properly functioning check spring, because in the sample which I have here, number one is a non-working check spring and number two is a properly working check spring. Okay, so and between these two stitch samples, the only variable that was changed was the check spring. So let's talk about the spring. Okay, this is the end that your thread goes in, and when you get them, they may look like this, and your thread will get caught on this all the time. So all you have to do is to take it, and I think I'm going to need some pliers for this. All you have to do is just grab it, pretend it's like a paper clip, and then just push the push that end to the other side. Okay, there. So I squeezed it and I pushed the end to the other side, and now the end isn't sticking out anymore. It's caught up against the other part. Hopefully you guys caught that. Let me do it again. So it comes to me like this, where the end is open. And I want tension on this loop so that it's closed. So I'm just going to squeeze it with my pliers and flip that to the other side. Okay, I'm sorry, my phone is not focusing. So I flipped that tail to the other side. Now it's in tension on the big thing, That's all I did. Okay. Then your thread won't come out of that loop, and you can fiddle with it a little because you want it to be smooth. So I'm going to squeeze it a little bit. You might have to fiddle with this some. I'm going to squeeze the tail. Oh, I just dropped it on the floor. Okay. So I squeezed it a little. Okay, I'm gonna flip it back to the other side. Okay, now I can squeeze it more easily. I'm gonna grab it, sorry. I'm gonna grab it on the top. And I'm just gonna squeeze it together a little bit so that the vertical part is more in line with the other half. And then now I'm just gonna flip it back to the other side. Sorry, I don't know why my phone keeps focusing on the other part. So now I'm gonna flip it back to the other side because you can see it's an open right now. And I'm gonna just squeeze this and flip it back to the other side. Now it's closed. Okay, it's just held by the tension. It's kind of like a paper clip. Okay, so that's the first thing I'm gonna do. Then the second thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna install this on my machine and we're gonna take a look, okay? So I have one right now that I have installed on the machine. We're gonna take a look at it. So this is supposed to rotate up and down when your thread comes from your tension device. It's supposed to go into the loop and then up to the looper, okay, which is here. This is the looper. You have to adjust these springs so that they're lined up properly. You want them to wiggle, and you want them in line with the looper. I'm going to have to move the camera so we can get a better angle on the second part. But the first thing I see is that when I look at my machine, I just installed this spring. And if you look right here, you can see that, let me move my light. You can see that the coil, this part right here, well, it would be this way. This part right here is actually hidden inside of this metal housing. So it's restricting the movement of this spring. So we're gonna have to take this out and we're gonna have to free it up so that this arm can rotate better. What we're looking at right now, I'll just use this as a pointer. The arm, this piece of metal, the arm is dragging right here. You can see the arm is dragging across this piece of metal right here. So that's restricting my spring motion. So the first thing you want to do is you want to free up your spring so it can actually rotate and take advantage of the coils. So we're going to have to modify this spring to be free of that. So that's the first thing we're going to do. Hold on. Okay, so now I've tried to line you guys up so that we are straight on looking at the looper from the tension device to the looper, and we're going to work on this spring. Okay, so to take the spring out, let's just say that we just got this machine and or we're trying to install a new spring. So to install or remove it, there's a screw over here, and we just unscrew this screw. I have this white sheet here just to make it easier for you to see. So I'm going to take that screw out. Okay, it's just a regular screw. I'm going to set it on the side. Put this sheet back. If the sheet's not here, you can see the hole in my table, but I thought this might make it better for your viewing. So then I'm just going to grab the spring and I'm just going to pull it out. Okay. And then I know that this part in between my thumbs, it needs to get longer, so we're going to stretch it. So I'm going to grab some pliers. and I'm going to grab onto that spring. I think I need to get a pair of pliers. Okay, so these are my jewelry pliers. They're flat. They don't have gripping teeth. I'm going to go grab another set of pliers with teeth. Hang on. Okay, so I went to the tool chest and I found my electrical pliers. These have some good teeth on the end. So we're going to use those. And I have a pair of needle nose pliers that also have some teeth on them. So we're going to use those. So what we're doing here is we're attempting to lengthen the coil so that part of the coil will stick out of this housing and we'll get the most action out of the spring because it's supposed to be functioning and doing something. So I'm just going to grab both ends of the spring and I'm going to pull. Okay, so it got longer on one side. I'm going to switch to the back side. I'm going to pull on the back side. Okay, so now I made it longer. All right, it's not pretty. Okay, it's not even, but hopefully it's going to stick out. Okay, I'm gonna just even up the front side a little bit now because it got like a little not straight. So I'm gonna grab the front side. I'm gonna pull on that a little bit. Oh, sorry, you can see I'm pulling on it, stretching it out. Okay. Sorry, I hit the camera mount. Okay, so that should be good. So now I'm gonna stick it back in. We're gonna see what's the situation. Okay, I don't like that. It's not sticking out enough yet. It's sticking out a little bit on this side, not on this side. Hang on a minute. Hang on, I can't. Okay, so if I screw this back in and I put my finger there, maybe you can see that it's sticking out a little over here, but it's not sticking out over here. So I'm going to make it a little longer. Okay, so I'm going to take this out and make it a little longer. So I'm going to grab my spring again with my pliers. And I'm going to pull. It's like when you were little and you had a slinky and you broke it. This is what we're doing. Going to grab this here and I'm going to pull. Okay, you can do it just like a little bit at a time. Now we're going to go back and check and see if this is going to stick out. Okay, so now it's sticking out. It's pointing up. I don't really like that. So I'm going to bend this down a little bit. I'm going to take it back out. I'm going to look at it. And I'm just going to grab it here. And I'm just going to try to bend it with my hand. Bend it down a little bit. Now I'm going to put it back in. Okay. And put my finger there like it's the screw. Okay, I like that. Now I have the coil spring is sticking out and you can see it's moving. So this is good. So I'm gonna get the spring involved now when this moves back and forth, but I'm still gonna have to do some adjusting. Okay, so it's right here. Let me zoom in. Right here, it's kind of far away from this thing, and you wanna keep the spring. My looper is right here. Let me raise you up a little bit. Hang on. Okay. So this is the looper right here. you want to have the end of the spring a little bit to the right of the looper. If you have your spring on this side, it tends to get your thread caught, and your thread tends to wrap around this part and get snagged. So when I do these and I set them up, I always try to put this loop a little bit to the right side of the looper, and it makes your thread get caught a little less. So I'm going to look at this here, and I'm going to put it as if the screw's in, and I'm going to push this back a little bit. Okay. So I'm going to take it out. I'm going to look at it. I'm going to grab it with the pliers somewhere. Okay, I'm just going to grab it here. And I'm going to just, okay, so I've got a hold of like the last two coils. I'm just going to bend this down. Okay. So it's not pretty, doesn't look great, but hopefully it will work when I put it back in. So I'm going to put this back in. Take a look. This takes a little bit of effort. I'm locating the hook where the screw would be. Oh, okay, so that's much nicer. Now the arm is coming out nice and straight along the side. And now I can go to the second step, which is to adjust this part of it. Okay, so right now, if I put the screw in, you can see that this arm, it may be hard to tell from this angle, but it's actually pointing like down and away. So I'm going to have to rotate it so it comes back up to the front. Okay. Part of stretching the spring changes the angle of where the two ends go. So I've got the round pliers here. So I know that this has to come forward. So I'm going to take out the screw. I'm going to take out the spring. I'm going to use round pliers because I happen to own them. But if you don't own round pliers, you can use the square ones. It just isn't going to look as pretty. So I'm going to grab my spring here. And I know it has to turn more. So I'm going to take my hand and I'm going to push this end. And I'm going to basically like bend it into more of a circle by pushing it down. Okay. So I'm like continuing the loop to get it to go around a little more. And I'm going to put it back and we'll see. Okay, much better. So now my spring is actually coming up and it's much closer to where we want it in the front. And it's free to move up and down. And then on this one, I have to, let me take it out real quick. I have to get the tail to be on the other side. So I'm going to grab it with my pliers and I'm going to squeeze it and rotate my pliers at the same time. Okay, so now the tail's on the other side and my thread won't come out of the loop. And I'm going to put this back. Oh, get it in here. Sorry, that's rubber from my pliers handle. So now I'm going to put the screw back. Where'd the screw go? Here's the screw. I'm going to put the screw back in. Okay, so now my spring is up to the front and it's coming out nicely parallel with the arm. The screw's holding it in. I'm gonna tighten that and see where we end up. Okay, so this is looking nice. I'm pretty happy with this. The spring is sticking out on both ends. It's not stuck in there. And this, most importantly, is free to move up and down, and the spring is not caught. So that's the first step, because the spring is not just this arm. I mean, this arm does bend. If this was still, this arm does bend, but the actual spring is coming from this. This is their spring action. And when you're sewing, you want the loop on this end, you want this loop to go up and down as much as possible. That gives you the most spring action. So now I'm going to back out a little bit. I'm going to take a look at this setup. So from this perspective, we can see that the spring is to the right side. The loop on the end of the spring is to the right side of the looper. So I like that. If it was over here on the left side of the looper, I think that tends to get your thread wrapped around the loop more frequently, and then your thread will snag and break. So it's over here, and then let me take you out of the phone and show you from the side. So now it's in front, it's to the right side of the looper, and it's, if this is perpendicular, it's in front of the looper. So I may need to move it back some because you want it to be more in line with the looper. And right now, let me see if I can put this here, if this will help. Okay, right now, if we drop something straight down from the looper, I can see that this is very far in front. And I actually want it to be more like back underneath the looper. So it needs to go down towards the back of the machine. So I'm gonna bend it that way now. So let me put you back in the phone holder. Okay, so now we're looking at the bottom of the machine. I have the machine tilted back in my table. And from this angle, you can see that the looper is here and the spring is in front. So I need to bend it so that it's back, at least in line with the looper. If not, maybe a little behind it, but in line with the looper is good enough. So you can use any pair of pliers you want. I'm going to use my round nose pliers because it won't leave bent marks in this. And I have to bend this wire somewhere around in here to get it to turn back. So I'm just gonna start, I guess, around here. And I'm gonna hold it with my pliers and I'm gonna just bend it around. And that way now well, it's not too pretty, I guess, but my pliers have bent it back. So now, okay, I'll use this. Now you can see if we put this pencil into my looper and make it go straight down, the spring is actually in line with the looper. Okay, it's right there, directly underneath the looper. Whereas before I bent it, it was out in front. Now it is like right in line with the looper. It's literally hitting the pencil, so I'm having to move the pencil out of the way. So that's pretty good. I'm going to give this a try. However, now I see that my looper, now that I've bent it down, it's actually too far to the left. So I'm going to go back and bend it a little bit to the right. So I'm going to grab it higher, I guess, and I'm going to bend it back the other way. I'm going to do this in a couple bends to see if I can get it to not be such a sharp angle. Okay, that may have been a little too much because now it's really far. If I put this pencil here as a straight line coming out of the looper, the loop is too far to the right. So I need it not, this is directly under, this would be more to the right. It's too far to the right. So I'm going to bend it back. Okay. Oops. Sorry, I don't have a camera person. So I'm gonna just grab my pliers, I'm gonna grab it back here, and I'm just gonna take my hand and I'm gonna bend it back a little bit. Okay, and I think I bent it too far. So I'm going to put my pliers back here, and I'm going to bend it back the other way. And then I'm going to fling it around, make sure it's free to move, and let's check it out. Okay, so now we double check both directions. So now, oh, look at that, it's too far forward. So I'm going to bend it a little bit more back. Okay. Now, I have it back in line with, sorry, let me raise you up here a little bit. Okay, now I have it back in line with the looper if I point this pencil straight out of the looper, but as you can see, it's actually touching the pencil, so I need to back it off to the right a little bit. This is an iterative process, and you may not get it right the first time. So I'm going to put my pencil back in check. Now it is to the right of the pencil, but it's still in front. So I'm going to bend it back this way a little bit. I'm going to come up here and bend it up top. There's no right way to do this, but I believe it functions best when it's closer to directly underneath the looper and slightly to the right. So right now it's in front. If it's in front of the looper, your thread has to come out of here. Here, let's just put the thread in it. Your thread has to come out. Okay, so your thread has to come out of the tension discs, and then it has to go back towards the looper. So you can see that this tight angle here, that actually is introducing additional tension. Your thread having to make this tight right turn around the wire is introducing additional tension. That is not necessarily the best thing. So I would rather my thread pass through just grazing this wire. So I'm going to back the wire up so that it is behind the looper and to the right, both things. So I'm just bending it with my pliers. It's getting all wonky and out of shape, but I want it to be under. So now I'm under, and the top of it, where your thread's going to be, is to the right. I'm going to bend it a little more. I'm sorry, this is turning into a really long video, but chain stitching takes time. It takes time to learn everything. And unfortunately, it's not easy, and it's just not happening overnight. And I'm going to test this, and it may be wrong, and I may bend it around some more. So now, if my pencil is here, my loop is directly under the looper. It's a little to the right. I'm going to try that, but this is bothering me. Okay. So it's a little to the right. Let's see, it's a little to the right, and it's also not in front of the looper. Okay, that's where I want it. However, this loop itself is actually at a wonky angle, so I'm gonna bend that back just for looks. I don't necessarily think it affects the function. So I'm gonna take this and I'm gonna bend it back. So it's like a little more perpendicular. Okay, there we go. Okay, let's see. So now, oops, trying to make it so you guys can see this. So now we take our pencil, look at it from the side, the pencil coming directly out of the looper. The loop in the spring is directly below. And when I look from the side, it's a little to the right. And I got my loop almost perpendicular. So when it bounces, it goes up and down. So as long as it's free to rotate, we're good. And I see that my spring has turned to the other side. So I'm going to rotate that back. Okay, so I'm just going to grab this and I'm going to squeeze it and rotate it. To the other side. Okay, it's not staying like that. So I'm going to have to open the loop a little bit. And then I'm going to rotate it to the other side. Okay. So now my thing is caught like the paper clip and everything's good. And then I can get my thread in, but you also want to check and make sure by pulling your thread back and forth that there's no sharp areas on this spring. I think we're okay. So now when my thread comes out and goes to the looper, it's not as severe of an angle. When it was too far in front, the angle of the thread was too tight. And now it's better. Okay, so you can see, hopefully, this is a flapper that is a holdover from the old days when people used to put their spools up here. Now we have a tension device up here, but the flapper remains on some machines. This is not really necessary, and I actually took a drill and I made my hole in the flapper bigger, so it was easier to pass my thread through, like a bigger eye of the needle. And then I smoothed out that hole, and then it goes from that hole into the tension discs, over the top. It goes over the top of the tension discs, under this pin, and then this pin from here directly to the check spring and up to the looper. And that's how I have mine adjusted. This pin really should just be kissing your thread, just to keep it in line with the looper, and it prevents your thread from jumping up and down and changing where it's being held in the check spring. So this is my tension here. It's very loose. There's not a lot of tension on these discs. And I have it so that my screw can go right to left, tighter or looser. If you can't adjust your tension any looser, you may need to chop off or make your spring smaller or bigger. If you chop off your spring, you can't put it back, but you can certainly stretch it and make it longer so that you get this screw into the middle of your threads adjustment. And this is how I've been working my machine. And you can see that the threads on the screw go right to left. And so I have my sorry, let me focus you. I have my, doesn't want to focus. There. I have this is where I've been running my tension sewing. It's right in the middle of the threads. So I have the most ability to make the threads tighter by screwing this button to the right, or make the threads looser by going to the left. So this gives me the maximum adjustability. If your tension is like way out here at the end, you can't make it any looser, but you can make it tighter. So you really, when you're sewing, you want to have your adjustments in the mid-range so that you can go tighter or looser as your project needs. And this spring, I did cut off a revolution. It was too long, and then maybe it was too short, so I actually stretched the spring to get me right into the middle. That's another iterative process, and I do talk about that in the unboxing video. So now let's put the machine back down and give some stitches and see how we look. Okay, so now I'm back. I have threaded the machine. I wanted to tell you that the machine is currently at 11 stitches per inch. So I sewed 11 stitches here. That's 12 holes, giving me 11 stitches. And I wanted you to see that it is exactly 11 stitches per inch. Well, yeah, okay, a little shorter, but it is at 11 stitches per inch, basically, give or take a little bit. And that 11 stitches per inch, it's 12 holes in the paper and 11 stitches. That's a really good average baseline for troubleshooting and checking your machine, is somewhere between 10 to 12 stitches per inch. so I usually go with 11. That's a great average length stitch. And then do your troubleshooting there. Don't make it too small or too big. So y'all saw me mess with the tension screw, adjusting screw, and I don't know what's gonna happen now because I changed the tension, but let's try first stitches and we'll see what happens. Let me get my light over here so you guys can, okay, that's not good. Okay, there. Having some lighting difficulty today. And trying not to block the area. Okay, so let's see what's gonna happen. That fuzz was from me breaking the thread. So it actually looks like my tension is a little tight right now. I'm gonna reach my hand under and I'm gonna loosen my tension adjusting nut couple turns. Oh, okay, that looks nice. I'm liking that. Just gonna do a couple turns back and forth so y'all can get a good idea of going counterclockwise and clockwise how it looks. So I don't know why it's so dark down there. Sorry. Okay, so let me go over this way a little bit and we'll take a look at the stitches. So I'm pretty happy with that. Let me lift my foot up so I can rotate this around a little bit. Right here, I see some broken thread. That is not making me happy. I might need to go over that check spring very lightly with some 400 grit sandpaper, but you can see that my stitches are laying down very nicely. I'm not liking this rough spot in the thread a little bit, so I may need to just double check that check spring and come back. Oh, I guess I gotta put the foot down if I want to sew. So so you can see my stitches are nice and flat. And that's the check spring in action. They're beautiful little donuts. It's very nice. I'm gonna smooth my check spring and come right back. Okay, so to smooth the check spring, I am using Mitchell's abrasive cords. This is size number 49. It's pretty thick, but I always keep it attached to the spool, and then the end that I've used is not as coarse. If you read the specs on this abrasive cords are something like 60 or 80 grit, which is way too rough for anything on the machine. However, that grit breaks down really quickly and it becomes a lot finer. So I'm just smoothing my check spring here. It's wiggling around, but I'm gonna try to do it both directions. Get all sides that the thread might touch. We'll go back up and see if this helps. Okay, so we're back on top. I haven't taken the thread out, but I did put a knot in it, so I probably have to pull the knot up so it doesn't get sewed through the needle. So there's my knot in my string, my thread. I tied the knot so that I didn't have to rethread my machine. Sorry. Now let's give this a try. I'm sorry if the phone is moving or wiggling a little bit with the sewing. because I have the phone mount attached to the table. Okay, so I do have some fraying still right here. You can see that the stitches on the bottom are perfect, so it's not my timing, but I've got just a little bit of fraying. And if you look at this, both times the fraying happened on the left side as I'm going around. It's only happening on one side. Okay, well, I'm not getting it there, so maybe we're good. I just sewed that line, and it actually looks pretty good. So I definitely think I needed to smooth out the check spring. Got a little thing going on there, but it's way better. Let me get another piece of fabric and we'll test this again. So I'm back with a clean piece of fabric. We'll test this again. I don't know why it's so dim back there. Oh my goodness. Oh, my light fell down, that's why. Okay. Okay, pretty happy with that. I do see a little bit of fraying. It's not perfect. I probably need to try to smooth the check spring out again, but I'm gonna say that this is pretty good. New check spring. It's not bad at all. I got nice, let me do a line of straight stitching. Okay, so got some nice donuts going there. Stitches are pretty well laying down, a little bit up on the corner. Need to check, maybe I need to take a look at my check spring and see if it's moving or what happened. Okay, so you can see that it's a little to the right of the looper. Sorry, I'm trying to do this with a foot and hand coordination, not the best. So let's watch that. Hopefully it'll get in focus. So that's what it's doing. I don't know if that's the best, but it's a little bit of trial and error. It is. Oh, I sewed off my fabric. And I think I broke my thread. Let me see. Oh, no, it's still going. Sorry. Okay. So you can see it's pretty much below the looper and going up and down. And it's a little to the right. I'm pretty happy with that, but I think I might try to smooth out the spring one more time. That could be fraying my thread, or I need to probably clean out my nipple and needle bar tube. Oh my goodness. Let me get back up here on top. Okay, so sorry, short addition here. I tied off my thread on the other end, and I'm holding it on top and I'm pulling it, and I'm examining my check spring, making sure that it's staying to the right side of the looper, and it is a little out in front. I made it a little lower. It is more in this direction. It was up here a little bit, and I bent it down a little bit. This is a test it and see kind of thing, but you can see as I'm pulling the thread, you can see how much it's going up and down, what it's doing, and I'm okay with that, but it needs to go back a little bit. Okay, so pulling on my string, my thread, and checking the action of the spring, it's staying to the right of the looper, and when I look from this side, it's also behind the looper. So you want it lower or behind the looper, which is that direction, and a little to the right. So I'm happy with that. All right, let me test this. It's always some changes you can make. Okay, so I thought my video was over, but I went back and adjusted the check spring a little more, as you've seen me testing it by pulling the thread, and I'm sorry I didn't think of that earlier. So now I'm going to do some test stitches, and I think just relocating the spring actually has solved my fraying problem. I did not go back and smooth out that wire at all, and now I'm getting just the most beautiful stitches with my second trial and error of adjusting the spring. Hang on a minute, I'll show you these stitches. They're very nice. No fraying on the thread at all. It's like the simplest of things. It can really change your stitches. Beautiful. Okay, so my check spring is now properly adjusted, and I do believe that that last little adjustment of getting it a little further back behind the looper, a little lower, has made a huge difference, and my stitches are excellent. Very, very happy with how that looks. And you can see from down low, they're pretty much laying flat. I mean, they stick up a little bit, you know, but sorry, I'm moving around, guys. Very happy with how that came out. Okay, thanks for watching. Okay, so that is everything that you ever wanted to know about a check spring. Check spring. Everything you wanted to know. Okay, thanks for watching.